Guernsey, Guernsey is an island in the English Channel off the coast of Normandy. It lies roughly north of St. Malo and to the west of Jersey and the Cotentin Peninsula. With several smaller nearby islands, it forms a jurisdiction within the bailiwick of Guernsey, a British Crown dependency. The jurisdiction is made up of 10 parishes on the island of Guernsey, 3 other inhabited islands Herm, Jethu, and Loo, although there is only 1 resident each on Jethu and Loo, and many small islets and rocks.
Constitutional status.
The jurisdiction is not part of the United Kingdom, although defence and most foreign relations are handled by the British government. While the original root, Guernsey, is of uncertain origin and meaning, possibly deriving from either a personal name such as Granny or Wherein, or from Gran, meaning pine tree. Previous names for the Channel Islands vary over history, but include the Lena Islands, and Sanya. Sanya is the Latin name for Guernsey, or Lycia Guernsey and Anja Jersey.
History. Early history.
Around 6000 BC, rising seas created the English Channel and separated the Norman promontories that became the bailiwicks of Guernsey and Jersey from continental Europe. Neolithic farmers then settled on its coast and built the dolmens and menhas found in the islands today, providing evidence of human presence dating back to around 5000 BC. Evidence of Roman settlements on the island, and the discovery of amphorae from the Herculaneum area and Spain, show evidence of an intricate trading network with regional and long-distance trade. Buildings found in La Platerie, St. Peter Port dating from 100 to 400 AD appear to be warehouses. The earliest evidence of shipping was the discovery of a wreck of a ship in St. Peter Port Harbour, which has been named Asterix. It is thought to be a 3rd century Roman cargo vessel and was probably at anchor or grounded when a fire broke out. Travelling from the Kingdom of Gwent, Saint Samson, later the Abbot of Dol in Brittany, is credited with the introduction of Christianity to Guernsey.
Middle Ages.
In 933, the Cotentin Peninsula including of Ranchin, which included the islands, were placed by the French King Ranulf under the control of William I. The island of Guernsey and the other Channel Islands represent the last remnants of the medieval Duchy of Normandy. The islands were then recognized by the 1259 Treaty of Paris as part of Henry III's territories. During the Middle Ages, the island was a haven for pirates that would use the lamping technique to ground ships close to her waters. This intensified during the 100 Years' War, when, starting in 1339, the island was occupied by the Capetians on several occasions. In 1372, the island was invaded by Aragonese mercenaries under the command of Owain Lorgach, remembered as Yvon de Gales, who was in the pay of the French king. Owain and his dark-haired mercenaries were later absorbed into Guernsey legend as invading fairies from across the sea.
Early modern period.
As part of the peace between England and France, Pope Sixtus IV issued in 1483 a papal bull granting the privilege of neutrality, by which the islands, their harbours and seas, as far as the eye can see, were considered neutral territory. Anyone molesting islanders would be excommunicated. A royal charter in 1548 confirmed the neutrality. The French attempted to invade Jersey a year later in 1549 but were defeated by the militia. The neutrality lasted another century, until William III of England abolished the privilege due to privateering activity against Dutch ships. In the mid-16th century, the island was influenced by Calvinist reformers from Normandy. During the Marian persecutions, 3 women, the Guernsey martyrs, were burned at the stake for their Protestant beliefs, along with the infant son of one of the women. The burning of the infant was ordered by Bailiff Heliogoslin, with the advice of priests nearby who said the boy should burn due to having inherited moral stain from his mother. Later on, Heliogoslin fled the island to escape widespread outrage. During the English Civil War, Guernsey sided with the parliamentarians. The allegiance was not total, however. There were a few royalist uprisings in the southwest of the island, while Castle Cornet was occupied by the governor, Sir Peter Osborne, and royalist troops. In December 1651, with full honours of war, Castle Cornet surrendered. the last royalist outpost anywhere in the British Isles to surrender. Wars against France and Spain during the 17th and 18th centuries gave Guernsey shipowners and sea captains the opportunity to exploit the island's proximity to mainland Europe by applying for letters of marque and turning their merchantmen into privateers. By the beginning of the 18th century, Guernsey's residents were starting to settle in North America, in particular founding Guernsey County in Ohio in 1810. The threat of invasion by Napoleon prompted many defensive structures to be built at the end of that century. The early 19th century saw a dramatic increase in the prosperity of the island, due to its success in the global maritime trade, and the rise of the stone industry. Maritime trade suffered a major decline with the move away from sailing craft as materials such as iron and steel were not available on the island. Le Bray Duval was a tidal channel that made the northern extremity of Guernsey, Le Clos Duval, a tidal island. Le Bray Duval was drained and reclaimed in 1806 by the British government as a defence measure. The eastern end of the former channel became the town and harbour from 1820 of St. Sampson's, now the second biggest port in Guernsey. The western end of La Bray is now Le Grand Havre. The roadway called the bridge across the end of the harbour at St. Sampson's recalls the bridge that formerly linked the two parts of Guernsey at high tide. New roads were built and main roads metalled for ease of use by the military.
Contemporary period.
During the First World War, about 3,000 island men served in the British Expeditionary Force. Of these, about 1,000 served in the Royal Guernsey Light Infantry Regiment formed from the Royal Guernsey Militia in 1916. From the 30th of June 1940, during the Second World War, the Channel Islands were occupied by German troops. Before the occupation, 80% of Guernsey children had been evacuated to England to live with relatives or strangers during the war. Some children were never reunited with their families. The occupying German forces deported over 1,000 Guernsey residents to camps in southern Germany, notably to the Lager Lindell camp nearby Brackenderis and to Lorfen. Guernsey was very heavily fortified during World War II, out of all proportion to the island's strategic value. German defences and alterations remain visible, particularly to Castle Cornet and around the northern coast of the island. Guernsey and Jersey were both liberated on the 9th of May 1945, now celebrated as Liberation Day on the two islands. During the late 1940s the island repaired the damage caused to its buildings during the occupation. The tomato industry started up again and thrived until the 1970s when the significant increase in world oil prices led to a sharp terminal decline. Tourism has remained important. Finance businesses grew in the 1970s and expanded in the next 2 decades and are important employers.
Geography.
Situated around Guernsey, Herm and some other smaller islands together have a total area of and coastlines of about. Elevation varies from sea level to at Hautneys on Guernsey. There are many smaller islands, islets, rocks and reefs in Guernsey waters. Combined with a tidal range of and fast currents of up to 12 knots, this makes sailing in local waters dangerous. The very large tidal variation provides an environmentally rich intertidal zone around the islands, and some sites have received Ramsar Convention designation.
Climate.
Guernsey's climate is temperate with mild winters and warm, sunny summers. It is classified as an oceanic climate, with a dry summer trend, although marginally wetter than Mediterranean summers. The warmest months are July and August, when temperatures are generally around with some days occasionally going above. On average, the coldest month is February with an average weekly mean air temperature of. Average weekly mean air temperature reaches in August. Snow rarely falls and is unlikely to settle, but is most likely to fall in February. The temperature rarely drops below freezing, although strong wind chill from Arctic winds can sometimes make it feel like it. The rainiest months are December average, November average and January average. July is, on average, the sunniest month with 250 hours recorded sunshine, December the least with 58 hours recorded sunshine. 50% of the days are overcast. A number of records were set in 2014. It was the highest annual mean temperature of. This is higher than for any other year, due to an almost complete absence of cold snaps during the winter months. 3 very wet months meant that the winter was the wettest on record. Halloween turned out to be warmer than any other on record, with the temperature peaking at.
Geology.
Guernsey has a geological history stretching further back into the past than most of Europe. It forms part of the geological province of France known as the Armorican Massif. There is a broad geological division between the north and south of the island. The southern Metamorphic complex is elevated above the geologically younger, lower-lying northern igneous complex. Guernsey has experienced a complex geological evolution, especially the rocks of the southern complex with multiple phases of intrusion and deformation recognizable. Guernsey is composed of 9 main rock types, 2 of which being granites and the rest gneiss.
Politics.
Guernsey is a parliamentary representative democracy and legally a British Crown dependency. The Lieutenant Governor of Guernsey is the representative of the Crown in right of the Republic of the Bailiwick of Guernsey. The official residence of the Lieutenant Governor is Government House. Since 2016 the incumbent has been Vice Admiral Sir Ian Corder KBE, CB, replacing his predecessor, Air Marshal Peter Walker, who had died in post. The post was created in 1835 as a result of the abolition of the office of Governor. Since that point, the Lieutenant Governor has always resided locally.
States of Guernsey.
The deliberative assembly of the States of Guernsey is called the States of Deliberation and consists of 38 people's deputies, elected from multi-member districts every 4 years. There are also 2 representatives from Alderney, a semi-autonomous dependency of the bailiwick, but Sark sends no representative since it has its own legislature. The bailiff or deputy bailiff preside in the assembly. There are also 2 non-voting members, H.M. Procurer analogous to the role of Attorney General and H.M. Controller analogous to Solicitor General, both appointed by the Crown and collectively known as the law officers of the Crown. A projet de loi is the equivalent of a UK bill or a French projet de loi, and a law is the equivalent of a UK Act of Parliament or a French law. A draft law passed by the states can have no legal effect until formally approved by Her Majesty in Council and promulgated by means of an order in Council. Laws are given the royal sanction at regular meetings of the Privy Council in London, after which they are returned to the islands for formal registration at the Royal Court. The states also make delegated legislation known as ordinances, ordonances and orders which do not require the royal assent. Commencement orders are usually in the form of ordinances. The Policy and Resources Committee is responsible for Guernsey's constitutional and external affairs, developing strategic and corporate policy and coordinating states' business. It also examines proposals and reports placed before Guernsey's Parliament, the States of Deliberation by departments and non-states bodies. The President of the Committee is the de facto head of government of Guernsey.
Legal system.
Guernsey's legal system originates in Norman customary law, overlaid with principles taken from English common law and equity as well as from statute law enacted by the competent legislatures, usually, but not always, the States of Guernsey. Guernsey has almost complete autonomy over internal affairs and certain external matters. However, the Crown, that is to say, the UK government, retains an ill-defined reserved power to intervene in the domestic affairs of any of the 5 Crown dependencies within the British Islands in the interests of good government. The UK Parliament is also a source of Guernsey law for those matters which are reserved to the UK, namely defence and foreign affairs. The head of the bailiwick judiciary in Guernsey is the bailiff, who, as well as performing the judicial functions of a Chief Justice, is also the head of the States of Guernsey and has certain civic, ceremonial and executive functions. The bailiff's functions may be exercised by the deputy bailiff. The posts of bailiff and deputy bailiff are Crown appointments. 16 jurats, who need no specific legal training, are elected by the states of election from among islanders. They act as a jury, as judges in civil and criminal cases and fix the sentence in criminal cases. first mentioned in 1179. There is a list of jurats who have served since 1299. The oldest courts of Guernsey can be traced back to the 9th century. The principal court is the Royal Court and exercises both civil and criminal jurisdiction. Additional courts, such as the Magistrates' Court, which deals with minor criminal matters, and the Court of Appeal, which hears appeals from the Royal Court, have been added to the island's legal system over the years.
External relations.
Several European countries have a consular presence within the jurisdiction. The French consulate is based at Victor Hugo's former residence at Hauteville House, while the jurisdiction of Guernsey has complete autonomy over internal affairs and certain external matters. The topic of complete independence from the British Crown has been discussed widely and frequently, with ideas ranging from Guernsey obtaining independence as a dominion to the bailiwicks of Guernsey and Jersey uniting and forming an independent federal state within the Commonwealth, whereby both islands retain their independence with regards to domestic affairs, but internationally, the islands would be regarded as one state. The douzaines levy an occupier's rate on properties to provide funding for running of the administration. Guernsey's Church of England parishes fall under the See of Canterbury, having split from the Bishopric of Winchester in 2014. The biggest parish is Castell, while the most populated is St. Peter Port.
Economy.
Financial services, such as banking, fund management, and insurance, account for about 37% of GDP. Tourism, manufacturing, and horticulture, mainly tomatoes and cut flowers, especially freesias, have been declining. Total island investment funds, used to fund pensions and future island costs, amount to £2.7 billion as of June 2016. The island issued a 30-year bond in December 2015 for £330 million, its first bond in 80 years. The island has been given a credit rating of AA/A1+ with a stable outlook from Standard & Poor's. Guernsey has the official ISO 3166-1 Alpha 2 code GG and the official ISO 3166-1 Alpha 3 code GGY. Market data vendors, such as Reuters, will report products related to Guernsey using the Alpha 3 code. In March 2016 there were over 32,291 people employed in Guernsey, with 4,864 being self-employed. 2,453 employing businesses. 19.6% work in the finance industry, and median earnings were £31,215.
Infrastructure.
Public services, such as water, wastewater, the two main harbours and the airport are still owned and controlled by the states of Guernsey. The electricity and postal services have been commercialised by the states and are now operated by companies wholly owned by the states of Guernsey. Gas is supplied by an independent private company. In 1998, Guernsey and Jersey jointly formed the Channel Islands electricity grid to operate and manage the submarine cables between Europe and the Channel Islands. The installation of these cables was originally to provide the island with a secure form of backup power, but now are effectively the primary source of power, with the local diesel generators providing backup. Guernsey Telecoms, which provided telecommunications, was sold by the states to Cable and Wireless plc, rebranded as Sure, and was sold to Bakelco in April 2013. Newtel was the first alternative telecommunications company on the island and was acquired by Wave Telecom in 2010 and subsequently rebranded as Jersey Telecom. Airtel Vodafone also provide a mobile network. Both the Guernsey Post postal boxes since 1969 and the telephone boxes since 2002 are painted blue, but otherwise are identical to their British counterparts, the red pillar box and red telephone box. In 2009 the telephone boxes at the bus station were painted yellow, just like they used to be when Guernsey Telecoms was state-owned. The oldest pillar box still in use in the British Isles can be found in Union Street, St. Peter Port, and dates back to 1853.
Transport.
Ports and harbours exist at St. Peter Port and St. Sampson. There is a single paved airport, Guernsey Airport. The states of Guernsey wholly own their own airline, or Rainiest. The decision to purchase the airline was made to protect important air links to and from the island, and the sale was completed on the 15th of May 2003. The Guernsey Railway, effectively an electric tramway, began working on the 20th of February 1892 and was abandoned on the 9th of June 1934. It replaced an earlier transport system which was worked by steam, the Guernsey Steam Tramway, which had operated from the 6th of June 1879 with 6 locomotives. Alderney is now the only Channel island with a working railway. A narrow-gauge railway was built by the German forces during World War II to transport materials used in the construction of coastal defences. This was removed after the war. Guernsey has a public bus service, operated by CT Plus on behalf of the states of Guernsey Environment and Infrastructure Department.
Business.
The finance industry forms the largest economic sector in Guernsey, generating around 40% of Guernsey's GDP and directly employing around 21% of its workforce. Banks began setting up operations in the island from the early 1960s onwards in order to avoid high onshore taxes and restrictive regulation. The industry regulator is the Guernsey Financial Services Commission, which was established in 1987. Prior to the growth of the finance industry, the island's main industries were quarrying and horticulture. The latter particularly declined as a result of the oil price shocks of the 1970s and the introduction of cheap North Sea gas that benefited Dutch growers.
Tourism.
Guernsey has been a tourist destination since at least the Victorian days, with the first tourist guide published in 1834. In the 19th century, 2 rail companies, London and South Western Railway and Great Western Railway, ran competing boats from the UK mainland to St. Peter Port, with a race to the only convenient berth. This was halted with the sinking of the SS Stella in 1899. Guernsey enters Britain in bloom, with St. Martin Parish winning the small town category twice in 2006 and 2011, St. Peter Port winning the large coastal category in 2014 and St. Peter's winning the small coastal prize in 2015. Home has won Britain in bloom categories several times, in 2002, 2008, and 2012. Home won the Britain in Bloom Gold Award. The military history of the island has left a number of fortifications, including Castle Cornet, Fort Grey, Guernsey Loophole Towers, and a large collection of German fortifications with a number of museums. The use of the roadstead in front of St. Peter Port by over 100 cruise ships a year is bringing over 100,000 day-trip passengers to the island each year.
Taxation.
Guernsey, Alderney and Sark each raise their own taxation, although in 1949 Alderney but not Sark transferred its fiscal rights to Guernsey. Personal tax liability differs according to whether an individual is resident in the island or not. Individuals resident in the jurisdiction of Guernsey, which does not include Sark, pay income tax at the rate of 20% on their worldwide income, whereas non-residents are only liable on income arising from activity or ownership within Guernsey. Unlike in the UK, the income tax year in Guernsey aligns to the calendar year. All Guernsey resident individuals are subject to an upper limit on their tax liability, which is known as the tax cap. Individuals may elect either of the following: tax on non-Guernsey source income restricted to £110,000, plus tax on Guernsey source income excluding Guernsey bank interest, or taxed on worldwide income restricted to £220,000, including Guernsey source income. Income derived from Guernsey land and property is excluded from the tax cap, as from the 1st of January 2015. And is subject to tax at the normal rate of 20%. Only one cap applies per married couple. As from the 1st of January 2019, these tax caps have increased to £130,000 and £260,000 respectively. Guernsey has also introduced a new lower £50,000 tax cap for new residents for 3 years, subject to buying an open market part-a house with a document duty in excess of that amount, and not having lived in Guernsey or Alderney for 3 years prior. Since 2008, Guernsey has operated 3 levels of corporation tax, depending on the source of the income: a 0% corporation tax rate on most companies, a 10% rate income from banking business, and, with effect from the 1st of January 2013, extended to domestic insurance business, fiduciary business, insurance intermediary business and insurance manager business. A 20% rate income from trading activities regulated by the Office of the Director General of Utility Regulation, and income from the ownership of lands and buildings. Guernsey levies no capital gains, inheritance, capital transfer, value-added VAT/TVA or general withholding taxes. In the 2011 budget, the UK announced that it would be ending low-value consignment relief that was being used to sell goods VAT-free to customers across the UK. With this legislation coming into force on the 1st of April 2012, tax revenues represent 22.4% of GDP.
Society. Demographics.
The population is 63,26 th of July 2016. The bailiwick ranked 10th in the world in 2015 with an average life expectancy of 82.47 years.
Border control.
The whole jurisdiction of Guernsey is part of the Common Travel Area. For immigration and nationality purposes it is UK law, and not Guernsey law, which applies technically the Immigration Act 1971, extended to Guernsey by order in council. Guernsey may not apply different immigration controls to the UK.
Housing restrictions.
Guernsey undertakes a population management mechanism using restrictions over who may work in the island through control of which properties people may live in. The housing market is split between local market properties and a set number of open market properties. Anyone may live in an open market property, but local market properties can only be lived in by those who qualify, either through being born in Guernsey to at least one local parent, by obtaining a housing license, or by virtue of sharing a property with someone who does qualify living en famille. Consequently, open market properties are much more expensive both to buy and to rent. Housing licenses are for fixed periods, often only valid for 4 years and only as long as the individual remains employed by a specified Guernsey employer. The license will specify the type of accommodation and be specific to the address the person lives in, and is often subject to a police record check. These restrictions apply equally regardless of whether the property is owned or rented, and only apply to occupation of the property. Thus a person whose housing license expires may continue to own a Guernsey property, but will no longer be able to live in it. There are no restrictions on who may own a property. There are a number of routes to qualifying as a local for housing purposes. Generally, it is sufficient to be born to at least one Guernsey parent and to live in the island for 10 years in a 20-year period. In a similar way, a partner married or otherwise of a local can acquire local status. Multiple problems arise following early separation of couples, especially if they have young children or if a local partner dies. In these situations, personal circumstances and compassion can add weight to requests for local status. Once local status has been achieved, it remains in place for life. Even a lengthy period of residence outside Guernsey does not invalidate local housing status. Although Guernsey's inhabitants are full British citizens, an endorsement restricting the right of establishment in other European Union states is placed in the passport of British citizens connected solely with the Channel Islands and Isle of Man. If classified with islander status, the British passport will be endorsed as follows. Their holder is not entitled to benefit from EU provisions relating to employment or establishment. Those who have a parent or grandparent born in the United Kingdom itself, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, or who have lived in the United Kingdom for 5 years, are not subject to this restriction.
Education.
Teaching in Guernsey is based on the English national curriculum. There are 10 primary schools, plus 2 junior schools and 3 infant schools. The island still has the 11+ exam, and pupils then transfer to one of 4 11 to 16 secondary schools, or a co-educational grammar school. There are also 3 fee-paying colleges with lower schools, for which pupils over 11 receive grant support from the states of Guernsey. In 2016, the states of Guernsey voted to end the use of the 11+ exams from 2019 onwards. It is also responsible for education on the neighboring islands. The Education Department is partway through a program of rebuilding its secondary schools. The department has completed the building of La Rondin Special Needs School, the 6th form centre at the grammar school, and the first phase of the new College of Further Education, a performing arts centre. The construction of St. Sampson's High was completed summer 2008 and admitted its first pupils in September 2008. In 2008, the school leaving age was raised, so the earliest date is the last Friday in June in the year a pupil turns 16, in line with England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. This means pupils will be between 15 and 10 months and 16 and 10 months before being able to leave. Prior to this, pupils could leave school at the end of the term in which they turned 14, if they so wished. A letter was required to be sent to the Education Department to confirm this. However, this option was undertaken by relatively few pupils, the majority choosing to complete their GCSEs and then either begin employment or continue their education. Post-GCSE pupils have a choice of transferring to the state-run grammar school and 6th form centre, or to the independent colleges for academic as A-levels, International Baccalaureate Diploma Programme. They also have the option to study vocational subjects at the island's Guernsey College of Further Education. There are no universities in the island. Students who attend university in the United Kingdom receive state support towards both maintenance and tuition fees. In 2007, the Education Department received the approval of the States Assembly to introduce student contributions to the costs of higher education, in the form of student loans, as apply in the UK. However, immediately after the general election of 2008, the States Assembly voted in favour of the RICI, which proposed abolishing the student loans scheme on the grounds that it was expensive to run and would potentially discourage students from going to, and then returning to the island from, university. In 2012, the Education Department reported to the States Assembly that it had no need to re-examine the basis of higher education funding at the present time.
Culture.
English is the language in general use by the majority of the population, while Guernsey, the Norman language of the island, is spoken fluently by only about 2% of the population according to 2001 census. However, 14% of the population claim some understanding of the language. Until the early 20th century, French was the only official language of the bailiwick, and all deeds for the sale and purchase of real estate in Guernsey were written in French until 1971. Family and place names reflect this linguistic heritage. George Mativier, a poet,